the company that owns everything, the BlackRock story. Friends, hello? We've done several episodes about interesting financial organizations. The Vatican Bank, BCCI, the bank of dictators and drug traffickers. But today we're going to talk about people compared to whom all of those are just children playing in a sandbox. All those Musks, Jeffs, and Bezoses. Small fry. You won't believe it, but it's true. Are you familiar with the name BlackRock? Many of you probably aren't. And yet this modest investment corporation manages assets worth $11.5 trillion. I didn't misspeak. 11.5 trillion US dollars. Recently, BlackRock acquired 2 strategic ports on both sides of the Panama Canal. BlackRock now controls one of the most important arteries of maritime shipping on the planet. Nobody hides that the decision was political. Trump didn't like the unhealthy activity the Chinese were developing around the canal, so BlackRock simply bought the ports from the Hong Kong company that owned them. The price tag, pocket change, $23 billion. By BlackRock standards, that's not even enough for coffee. As a bonus, they picked up controlling stakes in 40 more ports across 20 countries. For BlackRock, this isn't some strategic victory. It's a normal day. Most likely, while you're watching this video, BlackRock will buy something else: land, a business, a key technology, a politician, maybe an entire country. 11 trillion is hard to compare to anything. It's 1/3 of the US national debt. America's defense budget for 14 years. Nearly half of American GDP. It's 4 times the market cap of Apple. 30 times the wealth of Elon Musk. You could spend $1 billion a day, and the money would run out only after 30 years. The combined wealth of every billionaire on the planet is 16 trillion. BlackRock alone has 11.5. Where did these people get so much money, and why do they need so much? Is there perhaps a bid for world domination here? And what do conspiracy theories about COVID, the housing bubble, AI, the Chinese army, and the assassination attempt on Trump have to do with it? Let's try to figure it out. How it works. BlackRock itself insists these assets aren't theirs. Formally, that's true. They belong to investors, and BlackRock just manages them. But in practice, individual investors' shares are anonymized and spread across BlackRock's businesses. Nobody asks an individual client how to vote on the board of Apple or Lockheed Martin. You handed your money to BlackRock. BlackRock pays you dividends. But the monstrous financial and political influence that $11 trillion provides, BlackRock keeps for itself. BlackRock has significant stakes everywhere. Apple, 6.7%, the second largest stake. Microsoft, 7.3%. Alphabet, 7%. Amazon, 6%. Meta, 7.5%. United Healthcare, Pfizer, Cisco, Johnson & Johnson, Procter & Gamble, Bank of America, JP Morgan Chase, Tesla, Chevron, ExxonMobil, Coca-Cola and Pepsi, Visa and MasterCard, Disney and Netflix, Walmart and Home Depot, Fox and Comcast. We could go on forever. BlackRock's list of assets is gigantic, 5,500 companies. It owns on average about 5% in 95% of the S&P 500. That's 475 out of 500 companies. The average person anywhere in the world cannot avoid interacting with BlackRock. Pick up the phone, BlackRock. Turn on the TV, BlackRock. Buy shampoo and a soda. The soda, the store, and the shampoo are BlackRock. Pay with a card. Hi, it's us again. You could move to the countryside, but the house and land will likely be on a mortgage. The collateral is held by a bank, and the bank belongs to BlackRock. The company actively buys land and real estate in the US, Spain, Italy. The official story. How did one company end up buying most of the planet's main corporations? According to the official version, everything is simple and market-driven. BlackRock is an index fund. The idea is simple. Why invest in one thing when you can invest in everything at once? A fund collects money from clients and diversifies as much as possible. The market grew by 5%. The index fund grew by 5%. Along with Vanguard and State Street, BlackRock forms what's known as the Big Three. The man behind it. BlackRock has an official face, its founder, Larry Fink. Born in 1952 in California, to a teacher and a shoe store owner. After college, Fink went to work at the New York investment bank, First Boston, where he quickly became a Wall Street star. Thanks to his innovative experiments with mortgage products, the bank's assets grew to billions. Everything was going wonderfully until 1986. Then Fink incorrectly predicted the market and lost $100 million in one go. Not his money, First Boston's money. He either left or was fired. He himself happily tells this story, emphasizing that this failure motivated him to found BlackRock. But what happens next looks very strange. Fink's acquaintance, Stephen Schwarzman, a Lehman Brothers alum and founder of Blackstone Group, wanted to create an index fund. His partner was Peter Peterson, a former U.S. Secretary of Commerce, and these respected men invite Fink to run an index fund inside their company. Because obviously, who else would you invite? The man who just blew 100 million of other people's money. An amazing story, isn't it? Fink turned out to be a genius. In just a few years, the fund's assets grow to 50 billion. Despite this, in 1994, Blackstone sells BlackRock for just 240 million. Schwarzman would later call this a heroic mistake, but never explained what actually happened. In 1999, Fink takes the fund public. Those shares today are worth 60 times more than at IPO. But that's not yet the magic. The magic starts later. The assets entrusted to BlackRock begin growing like a snowball. In 2000, 190 billion. In 2006, BlackRock buys Merrill Lynch and breaks the first trillion. In 2010, 3 trillion. In 2021, 10 trillion. Aladdin. What's the secret? Fink seriously claims it's artificial intelligence, long before ChatGPT existed. BlackRock has its own computer system for trading and market analysis, continuously developed since the late 1980s. It has a beautiful name, Aladdin, an acronym, Asset, Liability, Debt, and Derivative Investment Network. Physically, it's several thousand computers in a heavily guarded data center. The system doesn't just execute trades, it assesses risks. Aladdin supposedly takes into account everything from political instability to weather, with access to statistics, scientific information, legal records, satellite imagery. Naturally, BlackRock buys up every promising AI startup. Fink fired the traders and hired mathematicians and programmers, long before the world started talking about neural networks. BlackRock claims Aladdin manages all of the company's assets, and they've been selling the system to third-party clients since 1999. In total, it manages assets worth more than $20 trillion. That's practically the entire US GDP. Honestly, this sounds like a B-movie. There's villain Lex Luthor, and he built a supercomputer capable of hacking capitalism. But it's not a joke. A skeptic might recall another financier with a magic computer, Bernie Madoff. He had a computer system in his office that could do only one thing: generate convincing but fake reports about trades. Of course, nobody's saying BlackRock is a financial pyramid, But you have to admit, a computer system is a super convenient excuse. Why does everything always work out for you? Why do you almost never go into the red? Magic computer. All questions go to Aladdin. It just won't talk to you because it's a computer. The government connection. BlackRock has another secret weapon, close, almost familial, relations with the US government and the Federal Reserve. Top officials freely move to BlackRock when they get tired of government salaries. Fink has employed dozens of former high-ranking civil servants this way, including former UK Chancellor George Osborne, who agreed to work 1 day a week for £650,000. Truly humiliating money. In 2020, when the Fed invested $750 billion in securities, BlackRock was put in charge of managing it. Of course, nobody accuses such a respected company of insider trading. BlackRock swears there's a Great Wall of China between its advisory and investment divisions. Let's believe them. Some malicious tongues say Larry Fink is one of those responsible for the 2008 housing bubble. And BlackRock made great money on it, but lost nothing, because it dumped all the risky assets right before the crisis began. These things happen. The conspiracy theories. Fink and BlackRock have a special relationship with mortgages. Robert Kennedy wrote on social media when he ran for president, BlackRock is taking away Americans' ability to buy homes. How can your children outbid the price BlackRock offers? The fund regularly buys individual homes and lots. Since the money is infinite, U.S. real estate prices rise at incredible speeds. The fund either rents what it buys or holds it empty. The most radical conspiracy theorists link the real estate buying to the theory that global elites plan to gradually deprive the entire planet of property. The plan supposedly is to turn people into rightless slaves who live in rented apartments, ride electric scooters, order delivery. The theory is called, "You will own nothing and you will be happy." Saying that BlackRock isn't liked is an understatement. Larry Fink at Davos allowed himself unfortunate statements. Last year he said, "Population reduction is very beneficial. Dying countries will start investing in robotization. It'll be much easier to replace people with machines." Logical, but combined with $10 trillion and the image of a sinister corporation, it creates the impression of a supervillain wanting to exterminate humanity. This year he said pensions in the future are only for Fortune 500 employees. Given that BlackRock owns plenty of pension funds, that's awkward. A separate line is COVID. Fink said, "The pandemic can help us realize our fragility. Let it make us throw all our forces into fighting global warming." Conspiracy theorists just looked at who's among the largest shareholders of Pfizer and Moderna. There are persistent rumors that BlackRock stood at the origins of cryptocurrencies, possibly launching Bitcoin behind the persona of Satoshi Nakamoto. BlackRock now controls almost 600,000 Bitcoins and invests in mining companies and crypto exchanges. Conspiracy theorists say Fink dreams of pulling off the 51% attack. If he controls 51% of mining capacity, he can take over the blockchain. After such stories, the fund activates its anti-crisis media. Natural, given that BlackRock partially owns all major American TV channels, both conservative and liberal. 12% of Fox, 16% of CBS, 12% of CNN, 12% of Disney, which owns ABC, plus 14% of a corporation that owns 250 daily newspapers and USA Today, plus 10% of Sinclair, which controls 72% of American regional television. In mainstream American media, BlackRock somehow isn't criticized very strongly. The ESG turn. At one point, trying to improve his image, Larry Fink got into ESG investing. where decisions consider ecology, social issues, and ideology. Fink openly stated that BlackRock representatives would vote against management that didn't pay enough attention to the woke agenda. It only got worse. The right became convinced BlackRock wanted to redraw the world for green energy, deindustrialization, and gender inclusivity. And the left didn't fall in love with the corporation either. The fund invests billions into fighting illegal migration. Fences, cameras, detention camps. It invests in oil, heavy industry, and defense. Climate activists glued themselves to BlackRock's Dublin office because the fund invests in businesses cutting down the Amazon worldwide. Fink publicly promised to donate $7 billion to fighting global warming. For BlackRock, pocket change. How about investments in the Chinese defense industry? Last year, information emerged that BlackRock had invested billions into 14 Chinese companies linked to the PLA, including corporations linked to China's nuclear program and the Uyghur re-education camps. In America, all this has long been under sanctions. The story was so scandalous, it provoked a public reaction from George Soros, who recommended Fink stop investing in repressive regimes. This year, Larry Fink officially announced BlackRock was abandoning woke capitalism. The other two members of the Big Three followed. A tsunami swept through American offices. Diversity budgets were slashed. DEI specialists were fired in whole departments. The agenda flipped overnight. Larry Fink changed his mind. The bigger picture. How will this story end? Hell knows. Maybe like with BCCI, it all bursts and dissolves like smoke. And everyone will say, how did this happen? Where was the government looking? But honestly, that seems improbable. $11.5 trillion create their own gravitational field. They distort surrounding reality simply by existing. It's much more likely the Big Three will one day take over the world. There's an interesting historical analogy. The East India Company. It started as a private British enterprise for developing colonized India. It turned out so profitable that the company soon became richer than its own government. It had its own military fleet and army. Eventually, it was nationalized. But by then, it wasn't clear who absorbed whom. Britain it, or it Britain. You can imagine the Big Three one day finally merging with the US government or buying themselves some other state. But what concerns me is something different. We've long been told there are two completely different systems: socialism and capitalism. Capitalism is when the market has different brands in private hands fighting it out. There's Pepsi and its competitor, Coca-Cola. Seemingly they can never meet. May the better product win. But there's a nuance. You look at Pepsi's largest shareholders, BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street. You look at Coca-Cola's largest shareholders, surprise, BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street. How exactly are two brands supposed to compete when they belong to the same people? And those people are tied to the same government and the same Federal Reserve. It's like that now everywhere. When everything is owned by three giant companies, is that a market economy or some other kind? And these three companies justify their decisions by referring to recommendations from a magic computer Aladdin, or don't justify them at all. They don't owe anyone an account. Imagine the degree of this power. It's so total we don't even notice it in everyday life. You come to a store. There's a choice between two options, and it's purely cosmetic. Tomorrow, Larry Fink wakes up and decides everyone should have a third ear on their forehead. The next day, a third ear becomes fashionable, and we all go to have it sewn on. Moreover, it will seem normal, like it's always been that way. So thanks to Comrade Fink for limiting himself to cutting down the Amazon. Forests are sorry, but we'll live without them somehow. But when the big three seriously gets down to people, that's when the real problems begin.